There comes a moment in every life when noise stops serving you, when talking too much starts costing you more than it gives. And in that moment, whether you recognize it or not, life is offering you a lesson. Not in shouting, not in proving, but in stillness. See, silence isn't empty. Silence is loaded. It's where clarity sharpens itself. It's where confidence doesn't need an audience. When you stay silent, you're not disappearing, you're observing. You're learning the room. You're learning yourself. And while others rush to explain who they are, you're becoming it. Most people think success is loud. It's not. Growth is quiet. Preparation is quiet. Purpose moves without announcement. When you stop reacting to everything, when you stop needing to be heard every second, something powerful happens. Life starts responding to you instead. Because when you're silent, you hear opportunity before it knocks. You feel timing before it arrives. You understand that what's meant for you doesn't need to be chased. It needs to be ready for. So don't rush the process. Don't argue with the moment. Stay silent. Stay disciplined. Stay present. And watch how, in that quiet space, everything you've been waiting for begins to come to you. Naturally. Silence as inner strength is one of the most misunderstood ideas in a world addicted to noise. People are taught early on that power belongs to the loudest voice in the room, that confidence must be announced, that presence must be proven through constant expression. But real strength doesn't beg for attention. It doesn't interrupt. It doesn't rush to defend itself. Inner strength is quiet because it is rooted, and what is rooted does not sway with every wind of opinion. Silence, in this sense, is not the absence of courage, but the evidence of it. It takes far more discipline to hold your tongue than to let it run. Anyone can react. Anyone can explode, argue, justify, or explain. It takes strength to pause, to observe, and to choose restraint when the ego is screaming to be fed. When a person is truly strong inside, they no longer feel the need to win every conversation or dominate every space. They understand that their value is not determined by how often they speak, but by how deeply they think and how steadily they act. Silence becomes a form of self-respect. It says, I know who I am, and I don't need your validation to confirm it. Weakness looks for applause. Strength waits for results. The silent individual is often the most dangerous in the room, not because they threaten others, but because they are not threatened by anyone. They are unshaken. They have mastered the art of emotional control, and emotional control is the foundation of all real power. Silence builds credibility. Words are easy. Promises are cheap. Anyone can claim greatness. Few can embody it. When you stay silent and let your actions speak, your presence gains weight. People begin to listen when you finally do speak because your words are rare and intentional. Silence trains you to speak with purpose instead of impulse. It transforms communication from noise into impact. The world eventually leans in to hear someone who never wastes their voice. Inner strength also uses silence as a shield against ego. Ego demands reaction. Ego wants to prove, to correct, to dominate. Silence starves ego. It forces humility. It creates space between stimulus and response, and in that space lies freedom. A silent person is not easily manipulated because they are not emotionally exposed. They don't reveal their insecurities through defensive speech or their plans through careless talk. They move strategically, calmly, patiently. This is not passivity. This is precision. In moments of pressure, silence becomes even more powerful. When chaos surrounds you, remaining calm and quiet sends a message stronger than any speech ever could. It signals confidence, composure, and self-command. People instinctively trust those who do not panic. Leaders who can be silent in storms inspire confidence because their stillness suggests control. Inner strength does not need theatrics. It stands firm and lets others exhaust themselves in noise while it remains grounded. Silence also deepens connection with oneself. When external noise fades, internal truth rises. You begin to hear your own thoughts clearly. You understand your values, your fears, your ambitions without interference. This self-awareness is the core of inner strength. A person who knows themselves does not crumble under criticism or inflate under praise. They're stable. They're centered. Silence gives you that center. Ultimately, silence is not about withdrawing from the world, but about choosing how you engage with it. It is about knowing that your worth is not measured in decibels. It is about understanding that restraint is not weakness, but mastery. When you stay silent, you are not losing your voice. You are sharpening it. You are allowing your presence, your actions, and your character to speak louder than words ever could, standing firm in the quiet confidence of someone who knows that real power does not announce itself. It arrives, it settles, and it remains without needing permission from anyone or anything, rooted in a calm certainty that does not rush, does not beg, and does not need to prove itself. To be real mastery of self before mastery of the world is a truth that challenges the way most people chase success. The world teaches control outward first. Control circumstances, control people, control outcomes. But history and experience show that anyone who cannot govern themselves will eventually be governed by their emotions, their impulses, or their fears. Self-mastery is the unseen foundation beneath every lasting achievement. It is the ability to remain steady when everything around you is shaking, to act with intention instead of reaction, and to choose discipline over comfort, even when no one is watching. The strongest individuals are not those who dominate others, but those who dominate their own habits. A person who cannot wake up on time, manage their anger, or stay consistent with their commitments will struggle to command respect or trust. The world mirrors your inner state. If your inner world is chaotic, your outer world will reflect that chaos. But when you bring order within yourself, the external world begins to respond differently. Opportunities align, decisions become clearer, and people sense the quiet authority that comes from someone who is in control of themselves. Self-mastery begins with awareness. You cannot lead what you do not understand. Understanding your triggers, weaknesses, and patterns is not a sign of vulnerability, but of courage. Most people avoid self-reflection because it is uncomfortable. It exposes flaws that cannot be blamed on anyone else. But those who embrace that discomfort gain power. They stop being surprised by their own reactions. They learn to pause before responding. In that pause, they reclaim control. The ability to choose your response instead of being dragged by emotion is one of the highest forms of strength. Discipline is the language of self-mastery. Motivation comes and goes, but discipline stays. It is the quiet agreement you make with yourself to do what needs to be done regardless of how you feel. When you keep promises to yourself, your confidence grows naturally. You no longer need external validation because you trust yourself. That trust is rare, and people can sense it. Leaders who have mastered themselves do not need to raise their voice. Their consistency speaks for them. Their calm presence carries weight because it is backed by inner order. Without self-mastery, success becomes dangerous. Power amplifies flaws. Money amplifies habits. Influence amplifies character. If a person gains control of the world without first controlling themselves, their success often collapses under its own weight. Ego grows faster than wisdom. Impulses go unchecked. Relationships fracture. History is full of talented individuals who lost everything because they never mastered their inner world. Self-mastery is not just preparation for success. It is protection from self-destruction. Mastering yourself also means mastering your reactions to failure. The world is unpredictable. Loss, rejection, and setbacks are unavoidable. But how you respond determines whether those moments break you or build you. A self-mastered person does not crumble when things go wrong. They learn. They adjust. They remain composed. They understand that failure is not a verdict on their worth, but feedback for their growth. This perspective keeps them moving forward while others stay stuck in blame or bitterness. There is also freedom in self-mastery. When you are controlled by cravings, approval, or fear, you are not free. You are reactive, constantly chasing or avoiding something. But when you master your desires, your time, and your focus, you reclaim ownership of your life. You stop being pulled in every direction by external noise. You move with intention. That freedom allows you to build something meaningful instead of constantly putting out fires. Self-mastery deepens humility. The more you understand yourself, the less you need to prove. You recognize that growth is a lifelong process. There is always something to refine, something to improve. This humility keeps you teachable. It opens the door to wisdom. Arrogance closes that door. The world respects those who are grounded, not those who pretend to have all the answers. Mastery of self creates that grounding. When you master yourself, you naturally earn influence. People follow those who are stable, disciplined, and consistent. Not because they demand obedience, but because their example inspires trust. You cannot inspire discipline if you live in disorder. You cannot demand focus if you're scattered. The world responds to alignment. When your inner values match your outward actions, your presence becomes magnetic. Ultimately, mastery of self is not about perfection. It is about progress. It is about choosing growth over excuses and responsibility over blame. Once you achieve that, the world becomes less intimidating because you know that no matter what happens outside of you, you are anchored within. From that anchor, you can navigate pressure, opportunity, and change with confidence, understanding that true power does not begin with controlling the world, but with ruling your own thoughts, habits, and choices until they work for you instead of against you, shaping a life that moves forward with clarity, restraint, and an unshakable sense of inner command. Trusting timing instead of forcing outcomes is one of the hardest disciplines to develop, especially in a world that rewards urgency and celebrates speed. From an early age, people are taught to chase, to push, to make things happen at all costs. Waiting is often mistaken for weakness, and patience is confused with indecision. But those who understand timing recognize that not everything can be accelerated without consequence. Some things ripen only when conditions are right, and forcing them too early often damages what could have been strong if allowed to develop naturally. Timing is not about passivity. It is about alignment. It is the awareness that effort must meet readiness for results to be sustainable. You can work relentlessly, but if the foundation is incomplete, the outcome will be fragile. Trusting timing means continuing to prepare even when progress is invisible. It means accepting that growth happens beneath the surface long before it becomes visible to others. This quiet preparation builds depth. When a moment finally arrives, you are not scrambling. You are ready. Forcing outcomes often comes from fear. Fear of falling behind. Fear of being overlooked. Fear of not being enough. When fear drives action, judgment becomes distorted. Decisions are rushed. Shortcuts are taken. Opportunities are grabbed before they are fully understood. Trusting timing requires emotional maturity. It asks you to sit with uncertainty without letting it control you. It teaches you that not everything meant for you will arrive on your schedule, but what arrives at the right time will stay. There is a difference between movement and progress. Forcing outcomes creates constant movement, but little direction. Trusting timing creates intentional progress. You move when it matters, not just when anxiety demands it. This restraint prevents unnecessary mistakes and wasted energy. It also sharpens discernment. You learn to recognize when to act and when to wait. That discernment becomes a quiet advantage in life and leadership. Trusting timing also builds confidence that is internal rather than reactive. When you stop forcing results, you stop tying your self-worth to immediate outcomes. You understand that delay is not denial. This mindset protects you from discouragement and comparison. Watching others succeed faster no longer unsettles you because you trust that your path has its own rhythm. That trust creates peace, and peace allows clarity. Many people sabotage opportunities by forcing them too early. Relationships collapse under pressure. Careers stall because growth was rushed. Ideas fail because they were launched before they were refined. Timing gives ideas room to mature. It allows skills to deepen. It allows character to strengthen. What arrives too soon often leaves just as quickly. What arrives in season tends to last. Trusting timing also teaches humility. It reminds you that not everything is under your control. You can influence outcomes, but you cannot dominate them. This humility keeps ego in check. It prevents entitlement. It fosters gratitude when things do arrive. You appreciate opportunities more deeply when you understand how long it took to be ready for them. There is also resilience in trusting timing. When setbacks occur, you don't interpret them as failure, but as feedback. You adjust instead of quitting. You continue refining instead of forcing. This resilience allows you to stay committed without becoming desperate. Desperation clouds judgment. Trust clears it. In leadership, trusting timing creates stability. Leaders who force outcomes often create burnout and resistance. Those who respect timing create sustainable momentum. They know when to push and when to pause. They allow people to grow into roles instead of demanding instant perfection. This patience builds loyalty and long-term strength. Trusting timing doesn't mean abandoning ambition. It means pairing ambition with wisdom. You still work. You still prepare. You still show up. But you release the need to control every result. You focus on what you can influence and let the rest unfold. This balance keeps you grounded and effective. Listening as a form of leadership is one of the most overlooked yet powerful traits a person can develop. In a world where everyone is trying to be heard, the one who truly listens immediately stands apart. Leadership is often imagined as speaking confidently, giving instructions, and commanding attention, but real influence begins long before a single word is spoken. It begins with presence. When a leader listens, they signal respect. They show that other perspectives matter, that understanding comes before authority. This alone builds trust, and trust is the currency of leadership. Listening requires restraint, and restraint requires strength. It is far easier to talk than to listen, especially when you believe you have the answer. Many people speak to assert dominance or to prove intelligence, but leaders who listen understand that wisdom grows from absorption, not exhibition. When you listen fully, without preparing your response while the other person is still talking, you gain access to information others miss. You hear not only words, but emotion, hesitation, conviction, and fear. This deeper understanding allows leaders to make decisions that are informed rather than impulsive. Great leaders recognize that silence creates space. In that space, people reveal themselves. When you do not rush to fill the quiet, others feel encouraged to speak honestly. They share ideas, concerns, and insights they would otherwise keep hidden. This openness strengthens teams and relationships because people feel seen rather than managed. Listening transforms leadership from control into collaboration. It shifts the dynamic from authority over others to alignment with others. Listening also sharpens judgment. Leaders are constantly faced with complex decisions, often under pressure. Those who listen gather more data, more context, and more nuance before acting. They understand that the loudest voice is not always the wisest one. By listening to multiple perspectives, leaders reduce blind spots. They see patterns, anticipate consequences, and respond with clarity instead of haste. This ability to pause and absorb is what separates reactive leadership from intentional leadership. There is humility in listening, and humility strengthens leadership rather than weakening it. When a leader listens, they admit that they do not know everything. This does not diminish authority, it humanizes it. People are more willing to follow someone who is open to learning than someone who pretends to be infallible. Listening invites mutual respect. It creates an environment where growth is shared rather than dictated. Listening also defuses conflict. Many disagreements escalate not because of opposing views, but because people feel unheard. When a leader listens calmly in moments of tension, they lower emotional intensity. They validate feelings without immediately taking sides. This does not mean agreeing with everyone, but it does mean acknowledging their experience. Once people feel heard, they become more receptive to solutions. Listening turns confrontation into dialogue, and dialogue into resolution. In leadership, listening is also a strategic advantage. Those who listen understand timing. They know when to speak and when to remain silent. Their words carry more weight because they are not constant. When they finally do speak, people pay attention. Listening refines communication. It ensures that when a leader speaks, their message is precise, relevant, and impactful. Words spoken after listening land differently because they address real needs rather than assumptions. Listening shapes culture. A leader who listens sets the tone for how others interact. It encourages empathy, patience, and respect throughout an organization or community. People begin to listen to one another instead of competing for attention. This culture of listening fosters innovation because ideas are not dismissed prematurely. It fosters loyalty because people feel valued. It fosters resilience because challenges are faced collectively rather than individually. Listening also strengthens self-control. Leaders who listen are less likely to be ruled by ego. They do not need to dominate conversations to feel important. They are comfortable allowing others to shine. This confidence attracts respect naturally. People follow leaders who are secure enough to listen because it signals inner stability. It shows that leadership is not about spotlight, but about stewardship. At its core, listening is an act of service. It places the focus on understanding rather than being understood. Leaders who embrace listening recognize that their role is not to have all the answers, but to guide others toward them. Through listening, they empower people to think, to contribute, and to take ownership. This empowerment multiplies leadership instead of centralizing it. Ultimately, listening transforms leadership from a position into a practice. It is not something you claim, but something you demonstrate consistently. Those who listen lead with clarity, compassion, and credibility. They influence not through volume, but through depth. In a noisy world, the leader who listens becomes a steady presence, someone others trust in moments of uncertainty, someone whose silence speaks assurance, and whose attention creates alignment. Proving that leadership is not defined by how loudly you speak, but by how completely you are willing to hear. Letting discipline and patience speak louder than words is a mindset built over time, not announced in a moment. It is the quiet decision to show up consistently when no one is applauding, to keep moving forward when progress feels invisible, and to trust that effort compounds even when results are delayed. In a culture obsessed with instant recognition, discipline and patience operate like underground roots. You don't see them growing, but they are the reason the tree stands tall when storms arrive. Words promise intention, but discipline proves commitment. Anyone can talk about what they plan to do. Very few are willing to do the work daily without needing to explain themselves. Discipline is not about harshness or restriction. It is about alignment. It is choosing actions that serve your future over impulses that satisfy the moment. Patience is what allows discipline to mature. Without patience, discipline becomes fragile, easily abandoned when rewards don't come fast enough. Together, they create a presence that doesn't need persuasion. When people observe consistency over time, belief forms naturally. No speech is required. No justification is needed. Results introduce you long before you speak. Ultimately, listening transforms leadership from a position into a practice. It is not something you claim, but something you demonstrate consistently. Those who listen lead with clarity, compassion, and credibility. They influence not through volume, but through depth. In a noisy world, the leader who listens becomes a steady presence, someone others trust in moments of uncertainty, someone whose silence speaks assurance, and whose attention creates alignment. Proving that leadership is not defined by how loudly you speak, but by how completely you are willing to hear. Letting discipline and patience speak louder than words is a mindset built over time, not announced in a moment. It is the quiet decision to show up consistently when no one is applauding, to keep moving forward when progress feels invisible, and to trust that effort compounds even when results are delayed. In a culture obsessed with instant recognition, discipline and patience operate like underground roots. You don't see them growing, but they are the reason the tree stands tall when storms arrive. Words promise intention, but discipline proves commitment. Anyone can talk about what they plan to do. Very few are willing to do the work daily without needing to explain themselves. Discipline is not about harshness or restriction. It is about alignment. It is choosing actions that serve your future over impulses that satisfy the moment. Patience is what allows discipline to mature. Without patience, discipline becomes fragile, easily abandoned when rewards don't come fast enough. Together, they create a presence that doesn't need persuasion. When people observe consistency over time, belief forms naturally. No speech is required. No justification is needed. Results introduce you long before you speak. Discipline also refines decision-making. It teaches you to delay gratification, to say no when necessary, and to stay focused on long-term outcomes. Patience allows those decisions to breathe. You don't rush conclusions or force timelines. You allow things to unfold at the right pace. This calm approach reduces mistakes and strengthens judgment. People sense that calm and associate it with competence. Letting discipline and patience speak louder than words also protects you from burnout. Constantly explaining yourself is exhausting. Proving yourself repeatedly drains energy. When your actions are consistent, explanation becomes unnecessary. Patience frees you from urgency. You move steadily instead of sprinting toward validation. This sustainable pace allows growth to continue without collapse. There's also dignity in silence backed by discipline. It communicates self-respect. You are not chasing attention. You are building substance. Patience keeps you from comparing your timeline to others. You understand that everyone's path unfolds differently. Comparison fades when you are committed to your own process. Discipline anchors you to that process. Together, they remove distraction and sharpen focus. Over time, discipline shapes identity. You become someone who does what they say internally, even if you say nothing externally. Patience allows that identity to solidify. You no longer feel the need to convince others of your direction. Your direction becomes evident through momentum. People begin to ask how you did it, not because you explained it well, but because you lived it consistently. In the end, words fade. Discipline leaves a trail. Patience ensures that trail leads somewhere meaningful. When both are present, your life becomes the message. People listen not because you speak, but because your consistency has already said everything that needs to be said, calmly, steadily, without announcement, without rush, allowing time and effort to reveal a strength that does not need to be declared to be recognized.